Dynamic conversations where families and stories come in all shapes and sizes. I come from a family of 12. You may be an only child. What matters is caring, sharing, and finding ways to relate to one another. Welcome to Family Dynamic Conversations Podcast. I'm your host, Janice Kingsbury. Thank you for joining me. Today's episode is about profiles in generations, thus the picture behind me. Here you see my grandmother, Katherine Warren. For those just listening, it's a rather sepia-colored picture. She is looking down. It's her profile. She looks very deep in thought. My mother is on the other corner here. That's Gloria Brosnan. She's looking out a window, so she looks very happy, with maybe in anticipation of a fun event going to be happening. Not sure. But she's got a nice smile on her face, you can tell. And then I'm in the corner here. It's a profile of me with my hair up in a bun. It was a dress rehearsal for my wedding back in the day. And then in the other corner is my daughter, who is holding a cup of wonderful Baskin-Robbins ice cream. She is looking down. Her hair is up in back. And we all look very similar in that profile. I have to begin with and let you know that I am severely addicted to Who Do You Think You Are, Finding Your Roots, DNA Journey, because I watch them hour after hour, and my husband will tell you it's kind of ridiculous. But anyway, I think it's fun to watch. It's fascinating to me how our ancestors brought us all into this world. And if it hadn't been for them, of course, we wouldn't exist. And I would love to know each of their stories. But my grandfather, my mom's father, kept it a secret. He didn't tell my mother. He probably told some of his sons, from what I understand. And they have all passed. The children of each of the sons may have some slight information, but pretty much it was kept away from all of us. So I have a sister, Mary, who's very diligently trying to find information. She really wanted to get it to my mom before my mom passed, but she could only go so far because we didn't have actual records of my grandfather. We were told that he was born in Connecticut, but the only clue I remember getting was that his family did not want him to marry outside of his religion. I don't know what religion that was. I have no idea the faith, so we can't go into church records of any kind to see where they got married, etc. So I watch these shows and I just dream about how I wish I knew that story. Now, I've written several pages about this and about this photograph, so I apologize if it sounds like I'm reading, but that's probably because I am. You know, when you pour your heart and soul into writing something, you want it to sound exactly as you wrote it. Instead of off the cuff thinking, oh, yeah, I could mention this, or this is a great idea. So I apologize if that's what it sounds like. My sister Mary did travel around the world. We did a 23andMe, and we found out through DNA that our origins are in Eastern Europe. So Poland, we knew we were part Polish and German. My mom was French, German, Polish. But again, we couldn't find much because we didn't have a lot of the details. Let me know if you have found your ancestry easily. You go back centuries and centuries, and Charlemagne's a great ancestor of yours, because I have no idea. And I applaud you for being diligent about it and being able to find all that information. I tried for years on Ancestry.com, and it was just too hard to find specifics because I think he had a sister, Kate. That's basically all I knew. And again, if he had changed the spelling of his last name, it's just going into a dark hole. But I do owe them my life, and I would love to know their story, which is my story. Let me know what roadblocks you hit along the way, or if it was very easy for you. I have also been blessed with 2 beautiful granddaughters, and I'm hoping to pass on this information to them. I guess my information. And of course, I'll tell them all about my mom and my dad so they can go back a few generations. My father's ancestry, I think, can go back a little bit further, back to Brosnan, Ireland. There's a Brosnan River back there. So the Brosnan name, I think, is a little bit easier to find. According to my mother, my grandmother, Katherine, was very kind and loving. I believe she was in her late 80s when I met her. I believe she died in her 90s. I don't hold on to dates very well. I think I've told you that in many podcasts. Dates and times, years, no. What I do remember is that she was an older woman who loved her daughter, which was my mom. My mom had 5 other brothers, so my mom was the only girl. And you could tell how sweet she was to her mom and her mom to her daughter. My grandmother was sitting most of the time when we would visit, or she was in a wheelchair, so not very mobile. I do remember her showing interest in us and wanting to talk to us young children. I remember thinking how well off they were because they had a beautiful home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you would walk into the living room and this beautiful, deep cherry colored, large mahogany pillars were on each side of the stairway. And then you would go up the stairway and there was a large landing, and you would turn to go up the stairs. And right at that corner there, they had a beautiful statuette light fixture that was bronze, I suppose. And the top floor was large bedrooms with large beds and dressers in several corners, large windows, much like that window my mom is looking out right in that picture. And to me, it was like living in a palace. The carpet was plush, the furniture was solid, the windows were huge with beautiful drapery on them. So I loved going to my grandparents and even loved even more staying overnight. It was such a special treat. In the living room, there was a small library off to the side, and there were beautiful built-in cabinets with glass fronts with beautiful books behind them. And again, all organized, all beautifully kept. There were stuffed animals and carved boxes, some ornate beautiful things of crystal. I can picture as a child walking in there and seeing this plush animal that was also a music box. I thought it was a rabbit, but my sister Marcia says, no, it was a blue dog. This is how bad my memory serves me sometimes. But as a child, I just remember turning on that box and listening to it. And it was a waltz. And I wish I knew the tune, but I don't. It kind of, you can hear it in my brain. I can kind of hear the music, but there's no way I would know the name of that tune. It was just a beautiful waltz. I believe it may have been a lullaby. Not sure. I'll look into that. It's so mean because I can picture myself holding it. I can picture winding it up. And I remember putting it right up to my ear and listening to it over and over again. It was so beautiful. It was so delicate. And it kind of reminds me of the movie Anastasia with that little music box. Love that movie. I know if I heard it again, I would immediately know that that was the song. I called my sister, and she and my mom had talked about it several times. And they came up with what they thought the song was, which was a song called More. But when I listened to that song and I Googled it, it didn't sound the same. So I don't know. One of these days it's going to come on one of these streaming platforms. I'm going, that's it. I'll let you know. They also had beautiful china plates that they always used. And when we would come over in time for lunch or dinner, they would have the thickest piece of ham that was so tender you could almost cut it with a fork. Oh my gosh, it was so delicious. That and some kind of potatoes and vegetables. Oh my gosh, delicious. And then there was always a choice of ice cream because my uncles were also owners of a pharmacy, but that pharmacy drugstore also had an ice cream parlor to it. It was so delicious. So they had the good stuff, that's for sure. Back to my grandmother. I do remember how she had a beautiful smile. I remember her also making us giggle, and she was very interested in talking to us. She wanted to know about how we felt about things, and we could talk to her easily. The problem is that with the other uncles around or my parents, they would talk about grown up stuff. I didn't feel I could contribute anything, but they also had a good sense of humor and they could talk about anything. So it was fun to listen to them and watch them in conversation. And I think that's how I may have picked up on ways to talk to strangers and talk to coworkers and just be involved in getting to know people. I believe my grandmother was very musical and creative. She would play the piano, and they had a beautiful grand piano. My mother played. I believe maybe her brothers might have played, but I know my grandmother also played. And they told me that my grandmother, Katherine, was musical. She was in a band back in the 20s or whatever years those were. My mom was born in 22, so it was probably in the early 1900s. But she sang and she also played the piano for the silent movie era. So back in the day, you would go to the theater and it would be a silent movie and they would have captions so you could understand what was happening in the movie. But she also played the piano along to give it a dramatic flair or a sincere flair or a loving and romantic flair. So she had a big part of that, which endears her even more to me. My mother had 5 brothers: Charles, Barton, Richard, Alton, and Robert Warren. As I knew them, I loved them all. Again, as my grandma and grandpa were, they were also interested in talking to us and seeing what was interested in our time right at the time. They wanted to know what we liked and enjoyed, and then they would tell stories of the past and their family and their experiences. I loved going to visit them and talking to them. I could see my mom's personality, and they would always have a way of making her giggle and talk about things. So that was always fun to visit and see her get animated and them get animated. Looking at my grandmother's profile, her hair has been styled beautifully with a delicate comb inset to hold a curl in place. I believe she's in her late teens in this picture, but again, I don't hold on to dates and ages. Her photo to me is her looking down in a reflective mood, mysterious in her thoughts. On to my beautiful mother, Gloria. She looks in this picture also to be in her teens. Again, I think the dress is some kind of beautiful party dress. It looks delicate and it looks like there's a bow in the back. And she may have been on her way to a dance or something. She too has her hair pulled back and away from her face. My mother always loved her hair curled and out of her way. Whenever I grew my hair out, she would always be pushing my hair out of my face. I want to see your face, she'd say. I could talk about my mother for hours. She was the most beloved person in our family. She lived to be 101. And I believe in her last 5 years of life, at least, she was praying to God for sweet relief to take her to heaven. And I believe God was saying, but your children have a couple more things they want to talk to you about. So if you can just hang around for a few more years, and then you'll be on your way. But she was in a lot of pain in her last few years. And if there's any indication of the slight bit of arthritis I feel every now and again, and she had that constantly in her hands, and in her feet, and in her back, my poor mother, I bless her a million times for hanging on that long. Thank you, Mom. My mother was a registered nurse. For how many years? Again, I don't know. At least 30, if not 40. She was a labor and delivery nurse and started her career in World War II. So those of you who have any connection with those that survived or were connected to World War II, please reach out and talk to them. Their stories are amazing. At one point, I got my mother on the phone and I said, I want to know the story about you meeting Dad in the war. And my mom started her nursing career there in the Great Lakes. And she was in Illinois when my father came in, who was injured. My father was in the Navy and he was a test pilot. So on one of these tests, his plane went down and he injured his shoulder. I believe it affected him for years, but he told us the story where the plane wouldn't respond, and as he was going down, he tried to open the top of the plane to get out of there, and it wouldn't open, and he crashed into the water and injured his shoulder. He was rescued and taken out, and he went to the hospital where my mother was working at the time. I created a story called The Start of Something Big, and I wrote it with her answering questions about how she met Dad and what she wore and what she thought about and how my dad treated her at the officers club. So it was really fun for me to listen to her telling that story. So I wrote about it, and I believe it's in the Library of Congress because I didn't know you could just write your story and then, hey, here's my story, send it to the Library of Congress, and there it will live in forever. So that was kind of fun. I highly recommend it. Feels pretty good when you receive that letter with the Library of Congress stamp on it. Wow. For her 90th birthday, we had a celebration there in Mankato. A lot of family and friends showed up, and they asked me to read a portion of that story just to give inside information about how my mom and dad met way back in 1945. I thought I would add a little excerpt from the story I wrote called The Start of Something Big, which I told you about. Now, this is a fictional story, but it's off the notes when I talked to my mom and what she told me it was like meeting Bert, my father, for the first time. So I put all her details together and then wrote a little story about it. And it's called The Start of Something Big. Gloria found her mind wandering, waiting for her teammate to make a decision about her cards. She hated playing bridge or any card game for that matter. Not much else to do after their shift ended at 3 o'clock. All eyes shot up from the table as her wooden folding chair creaked again for her shifting. Finally, Laura, the head nurse, chose poorly, causing them to lose the game. Inside, Gloria was thrilled. Well, that's done. Let's clean up and head over to the officers' club. It was one of the few places to go on the base for entertainment. They could always secure a pass and take the L train to Chicago, but that took a lot of money and planning. A midnight curfew always put the kibosh on the merrymaking at 11 o'clock anyway. You would have to leave enough time for getting back to the train station and back to the barracks to show your pass along with many other base escapees. At 9 that night, they lucked out with one booth left in the corner, still early enough to lack the usual cloud of cigarette smoke. Their woolen dress blues absorbed that smell like a paper towel to water and had to be sent out for cleaning quite often. The hanging tiki lamps and lingering smoke kept the atmosphere a bit mysterious. The singles of the group always found themselves squinting, searching for someone's eye to catch. The nurses never found themselves wanting for companionship. It was always the naval officers squinting. The white nurses' caps always called attention in the low light, sitting like ducks in the mist among the vultures. One of these pilots knew how to circle around and dive into position next to a pretty nurse. Others were quite coy. One thing was for sure, these guys thought a lot about the future and the lack thereof. Their mission was simple. Find love, find happiness, time is short. Gloria's group barely had their coats off before a round of drinks got the signal to get started. The bartender knew each nurse's preference, having to play this game almost every night. The officers had only to motion the signal, and Charlie started tipping the bottles and squirting the sodas. It was a friendly shot over the bow to the nurses' table. To initiate Bert into this new group of Illinois officers, a unanimous decision sent him delivering the drinks. With a half-smoked cigarette in the corner of his mouth and 4 glasses intertwined in his fingers, he set the glasses down in front of Gloria. His handsome smile reminded her immediately of the famous leading man at the time, Tyrone Power. "Cheers, ladies. Let me know when you hit their bottoms." He knew how to deliver a laugh along with the drinks, and he kept both coming for the rest of the night. The rum and cokes had to be changed to cokes only, knowing Anchors Away always played at 6 in the morning. The two groups merged with quick winks and big smiles all around. The officers would make side comments out of the sides of their mouths, delivered like Groucho Marx and Cary Grant, to keep them laughing. "Did you hear the one about the guy?" is how many of the stories started. Spirits were high and music was good. One officer caught Gloria's eye, and he was ready to make the move in for the score, but the nurse sitting next to her whispered, "He's married, you know." Overhearing the comment, Bert thrust his hand out in a very chivalrous manner to Gloria, requesting her presence on the dance floor. After all, you don't let sentimental journey go by without holding someone. That was a little excerpt from my book, The Start of Something Big. So again, please, listeners, if you know anybody that went through World War II, if anybody knows a test pilot, I would love to talk to them and hear their experiences. Time is short. I don't know. There's got to be some left. So I'm asking for your help to find anyone that was a test pilot in World War II. Let me know. I'd love to talk to them. I live in a over 55 community, and I'm going to post up some notes and see if there's anyone here living in this complex that has that naval history or background. Even a naval nurse, I would love to reach out and see, what's your story? Tell me about your experience, because I'm sure my mom could relate, and the story that she told, I could also relate to them. My mother had a great outlook on life and a fierce faith, giving her amazing strength, fortitude, and compassion. With her parents and brothers providing a fun sense of humor, and like I said, making her giggle all the time. And when you can talk to your mom, as I talk to mine, on the phone and just start telling these stories and giving the reactions that I would have, and she would start laughing, oh my gosh. That was the biggest gift you could ever give me. It was so fun to hear her laugh and giggle. And even now, my kids, when they're having fun and we're telling stories and they start laughing and we start crying laughing, oh, it's the best. Now my 2 little granddaughters just smile so big when they find themselves being entertaining and watching us laugh and have such a good time, and they just want to keep that going. Do that again, Nana. And I do it again, but trust me, to hear that laugh, oh, it's the best. My mother would listen and guide and again laugh when your story was humorous, but she could also tell when it was a little far-fetched, and her saying was, "I don't think so." That was her saying to you, I think you've gone a little bit too far. I don't believe you, Janice. But she'd swear it was the truth. And then she'd go, okay, fine. Then there's me. This picture back here is of me in 1985 doing a little dress rehearsal for my wedding. And my sister Cheryl, she was a hairdresser at the time. And I told her kind of what I wanted for the wedding and to put it up away from my face and put it up in a beautiful bun but have it full. And she nailed it with that. I just love that hairstyle. She did such a beautiful job. And as soon as I saw it, it reminded me of my grandmother's picture and how it was pulled up and away from her face and so gentle around her. So I said, please take a picture. I want to catch it forever to know that my hairstyle could look like that and show that I did resemble my mom and my grandmother. It was very special to me. I really loved this picture of my grandma, and another happy time when I could kind of match that same kind of look. And I couldn't wait for the picture to get developed. All right, kids, back in the day, I'm 64. So back in the day, you had a camera, you would take a picture. There was maybe 18 pictures on the roll of film. So you'd have to finish that roll of film. You would take it in and have it developed, and it took forever. Got to the point where it could be overnight, but back in that day, it was probably a week or more where you'd take it to the drugstore, drop it off, and look at your watch, look at the time, see the next date. Okay, still not done. And then finally get the pictures, flip, 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 and there's the one of me with my hair up. Oh, loved it. Every picture is worth 1,000 words, and that picture alone, I could probably write 2,000. So thank you to my sister Cheryl for doing such a beautiful job and capturing that moment. Yeah, I am forever in your debt. And the story about me is that, as I've said in other podcasts, I'm number 11 out of 12. I had 4 brothers and 7 sisters. I am the second from the bottom, and we had a wonderful life. I watch that movie every Christmas, by the way. Anyway, with so many personalities, you never got bored. You have to defend yourself, and you would strive to be the best in some form, some way, and you were constantly being compared. But I think it was also inspirational. It gave you different perspectives of so many people and personalities that going out into the world and meeting new people, you never knew what you were going to get. But you would also try not to judge anyone because you had so many experiences with so many people right in your own family. How could you, or how I felt, how could you judge anyone when you know that there's so much history from the moment you're born till that day? So I tried very hard not to judge people. And I find that I'm very empathetic, which sometimes is a detriment to me. I feel like I just am too sensitive about how people treat each other or treat me. There will be more of all about me in some other one. Right now, it's about these beautiful women in my life. And then there's my daughter, Samantha. Last but not least, definitely not least, she is the gift to me every day, along with my son. And now I have 2 more gifts from her, my 2 granddaughters. One is going to be 3 very soon, and the youngest one just turned 1, and they are amazing. In this picture of my daughter, who I said before was eating a little bit of Baskin-Robbins ice cream, this is such an innocent, soft, and gentle little girl. And I think that picture captures her personality completely. She's a thinker. She is loving. She is generous. She is giving. And I am blessed every day. She too is a talented storyteller and a writer. And whether she thinks that, I don't think she thinks she's a writer, but I know when she does write notes or thank you cards or makes posts, it's beautifully written. It's beautifully thought out. Probably beautifully grammatically correct, unlike my stuff. but I believe she is a very talented writer. She followed my mother's footsteps in the medical field and is a physician assistant and has been for, going on 9-10 years now. And I truly believe she got those instincts from my mom. She does really well, and I'm very proud of her. Her sense of humor shines all the time, whether she got that from her father's side or my side or her stepfather's side, Bill, or her brother, Spencer. I'm sure it all works together. But she's very funny, and I love when she does tell her funny stories. So, as I said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. There's probably a couple of thousand words there, but let me know what pictures you have of your family that spark conversation, that put you in that mood of nostalgia and thinking about the past, remembering your ancestors. If you've gotten to know more than your grandparents, maybe you knew your great grandparents. That would be a wonderful gift. I did not, but what I do know of my mom's parents and my dad's parents, I'm sure barely touches the surface of how wonderful they were, what their stories were in their lives, what experiences they had, and I wish I could go back and ask them. If you do have information about other military, naval people that were test pilots or nurses, please contact me and let me know. I would love to reach out to them and see if they'd like to tell their story. It's very important to keep that information fresh and out into the world so we never forget. Everybody's story is important. Please know that your story is important, and I would love to talk to you about it. Until the next time, please take care of yourself. Enjoy what you have today. Keep moving forward, and have a great evening, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you for listening. That's so awesome. Please give me a thumbs up. Please do a share. Let people know I want to talk to them about their stories. Bye for now.